The wind carried the smell of ash across the ruined plain. The world had once been alive with forests and rivers, but now the sky was filled with gray clouds that never cleared. The ground was broken, and the air held a faint taste of metal. Aaron walked across the cracked stones with steady steps. His clothes were torn from travel, but his eyes were calm. He knew he was not alone. From the cliffs above, shadows moved. Figures followed him in silence. Their armor shone in the faint light, and their weapons glimmered like sharp teeth. Aaron did not look up. He had already seen them. He knew they wanted him to feel fear, but his face remained steady. The patrol surrounded him at the edge of a broken bridge. Tall beings with scaled skin and bright golden eyes pointed their blades at him. Their leader stepped forward. She was taller than the rest, with silver markings along her armor and a voice that carried across the broken stones. "Human," she said, her tone sharp, "you walk freely in our land. Do you not know who rules here?" Aaron looked at her without, raising his hands. His voice was calm. "I know." The soldiers muttered among themselves. Prisoners usually begged, cried, or tried to run. This one simply stood, as if the weapons around him did not matter. The commander narrowed her eyes. Her name was Vera, known among her people as a warrior who showed no weakness. She had broken many who resisted her rule, and she had never seen a human before. She studied him carefully. His body looked fragile compared to her kind, yet there was no fear in his gaze. "Do you understand that you are my prisoner?" Vera asked. "Yes," Aaron answered. His single word was enough to silence her soldiers again. There was no anger, no desperation, only acceptance spoken with strength. Vera tilted her head. "Why do you not kneel? Why do you not tremble?" "I have no reason to," Aaron replied. The soldiers shifted uneasily. To them, fear was natural. Fear was a tool of survival. The absence of fear felt unnatural, almost dangerous. Vera gave a short command, and two of her soldiers stepped forward. They bound Aaron's hands, though he did not resist. He walked as they pushed him toward the transport craft waiting beyond the cliffs. The ground shook as the engines roared to life, lifting the group into the air. Inside the craft, the soldiers kept watch. Aaron sat quietly, his eyes moving across the metal walls and the controls at the front. He did not speak, but his stillness drew glances from the guards. Vera watched him closely. She had learned long ago that silence could be as sharp as a blade. Most prisoners begged to know their fate. This one asked nothing. She decided she would not break the silence first. The craft landed inside a fortress built from black stone and steel. Towers rose high and the walls glowed with faint energy lines. The base was alive with movement. Soldiers marched in order. Machines rumbled across the grounds and the sky was filled with war banners. Aaron was taken through wide halls where carvings showed battles of conquest. The alien empire had spread across many worlds, leaving ashes where forests once grew. Yet even as he passed the symbols of destruction, his face did not change. The soldiers led him into the main chamber, where light fell through a high window of crystal. Vera dismissed the guards and faced him alone. "You are different," she said. "Most creatures fear us. You do not. Why?" Aaron met her gaze. His eyes were calm, almost quiet, as if they held something she could not name. "Fear does not serve me," he said. Her voice hardened. "Fear keeps you alive. It keeps you from making foolish choices. Without fear, you are nothing but prey." Aaron shook his head slightly. "Without fear, I am free." The words struck her in a way she did not expect. She had heard countless cries of fear, countless words of surrender, but never such a reply. She stepped closer, her tall figure casting a shadow over him. "You stand in my hall, bound and unarmed," she said. "You face death. And yet you speak of freedom. Are all humans like you?" "No," Aaron said. Only those who choose. Vera studied him for a long moment. She could sense no falsehood in his voice. His calm unsettled her, though she would never admit it. For the first time in many years, she felt a question rise inside her that she could not easily answer. She turned away, her cape flowing behind her. "You will remain here. I will see how long your calm lasts." Soldiers entered again and led Aaron to a chamber of stone walls and heavy doors. They expected him to show anger or fear at his imprisonment. Instead, he sat on the floor and closed, his eyes as if resting. Through the small window above, the light faded as the sun sank behind the ruined horizon. The world outside was silent, but inside the fortress, whispers spread. The alien soldiers spoke of the strange human who did not bow to fear. Some called him foolish, others thought him dangerous. The night was silent in the alien fortress. Torches burned along the stone walls, and the sound of marching feet echoed through the halls. Inside her private chamber, Commander Vera sat by the wide crystal window, staring at the stars. Her mind was restless. The words of the human returned again and again. "Without fear, I am free." She had led armies across many worlds. She had seen warriors stronger and faster than humans, but none had spoken such words while facing certain death. Fear was a weapon to her people. It shaped discipline. It kept order. Yet this human had stood calm, as if fear had no power over him. At dawn, Vera walked through the fortress halls. Her soldiers saluted as she passed, but she barely noticed. Her thoughts were on the prisoner. She ordered 2 guards to bring him to the main chamber. Aaron was led inside, his hands still bound. His steps were steady, his gaze forward. The chamber was quiet, except for the low hum of the glowing energy lines carved into the stone floor. Vera dismissed the guards again, wishing to speak with him alone. For a long moment she studied him. He stood with a calm posture, not slouching, not tense, simply waiting. The light from the crystal window fell across his face, and she wondered how such a fragile form carried such unshaken strength. Finally, she spoke. "Human, I do not understand you. Most who stand here before me beg for life. They cry, they curse, they shout. You do none of these things. Why?" Aaron lifted his eyes to meet hers. His voice was calm and clear. "Because fear does not change. What will happen? If I die, I die. If I live, I live. Wasting breath on fear changes nothing." Vera frowned. His answer was too simple, yet it carried a weight she could not dismiss. She stepped closer. "Do you not value your life?" "I value it," Aaron said. "That is why I will not give it away to fear." Her silver-marked armor gleamed as she moved around him. She circled him the way a predator studies its prey. She searched for cracks in his calm, waiting for him to show weakness, but his breathing stayed even, his voice steady. "You speak as if you have faced death before," Vera said. "I have," Aaron answered. She stopped behind him. "Explain." Aaron looked toward the window, as if remembering a faraway place. "My people have always lived beside storms. We have seen fire fall from the sky, rivers rise to swallow our homes, and sickness take those we love. Fear was with us, but we walked forward anyway. That is how we survived." His words made Vera pause. She had fought wars, but never had. She heard someone speak of survival in such a way. To her, survival was conquest, strength crushing weakness. To him, survival was endurance, a quiet strength that refused to bow. "You compare me to a storm," she said. "Yes," Aaron replied. "A storm is dangerous, but it is not greater than the will to endure." For the first time in years, Vera felt uncertain. She searched his face for arrogance, for hidden mockery, but found none. His words were plain, spoken not with pride, but with truth. She stepped back, folding her arms. Your people must be strange creatures. You are fragile, yet you speak as if you are unbreakable. Aaron gave a faint smile, though not one of pride. We break, but when we do, we rise again. That is what makes us human. Her breath caught for a moment at the honesty in his tone. She quickly turned away, unwilling to let him see her pause. Outside the chamber, 2 guards waited. They exchanged whispers about the human. Rumors had already spread through the fortress. Some soldiers claimed the human had strange powers. Others believed his calm was a trap. Vera dismissed the guards with a gesture and walked to the tall chair at the end of the chamber. She sat down and rested her hand on the armrest. Her voice was firm once more. You say you fear nothing, but tell me this, human. If I threatened your world, if I ordered it burned, would you still stand calm? Aaron's gaze did not waver. I would fight for it. But fear would not help me fight. Courage would. The answer struck her again, sharper than she expected. She had always believed fear gave warriors their edge, yet here stood one who claimed the opposite. She wanted to dismiss his words as foolishness, but something inside her hesitated. She leaned forward. Why are you not afraid of me? I have power. I command armies. I could end you with a single order. Aaron looked at her without blinking. Because power does not decide everything. Spirit does. You cannot take that from me. For a moment, silence filled the chamber. The faint hum of the energy lines was the only sound. Vera's golden eyes narrowed, but her breath felt unsteady. No one had ever spoken to her like this, not without fear. Her voice lowered, almost against her will. Why are you not afraid, human? Aaron's answer was simple, yet it cut through the air like a blade. Because I choose not to be. The words hung in the chamber. Vera felt a tightness in her chest that she could not explain. She rose from her chair quickly, as if breaking free from the weight of his gaze. She ordered the guards to take him back to his chamber. As Aaron was led away, he walked with the same calm steps as before. The soldiers who watched whispered to one another, wondering how a human could stand so steady under the commander's eyes. When the chamber was empty, Vera stood alone by the window. She pressed her hand against the crystal, staring at the endless stars. She thought of her victories, her conquests, her reputation as a leader who inspired fear. Yet in her mind she heard only one voice. The fortress was alive with noise that morning. Soldiers marched across the training grounds, their weapons clashing in practice duels. Machines carried supplies from one tower to another. The alien banners moved in the cold wind, bright with the symbol of conquest. Yet inside her private chamber, Commander Vera felt no pride in the sight of her empire. Her thoughts were fixed on one thing only, the human. His words from the day before echoed in her mind. Because I choose not to be. The simplicity of the answer made it more dangerous. It challenged everything she believed about strength and fear. For her people, fear was the foundation of control. Soldiers obeyed because they feared punishment. Enemies surrendered because they feared destruction. But this human stood before her with nothing but calm eyes and a voice that carried no fear. She could not rest until she understood. She ordered the guards to bring him again. Aaron walked into the chamber with steady steps, his hands still bound. The guards bowed to Vera, then left at her command. The great crystal window filled the hall with pale light, shining across the stone carvings of battles long won. Vera studied him. Human, you test my patience. You speak in riddles. Yesterday you told me that fear is a choice. Today, I demand that you explain. Aaron looked at her quietly for a moment. Then he said, Fear is a feeling, but how we act is a choice. I can feel fear, but I do not have to live by it. Vera narrowed her golden eyes. You admit you feel fear, then. You are not fearless. No one is without fear, Aaron answered. But fear does not command me. I command myself. His words were soft, but they landed heavy in the air. Vera stepped closer, her armored boots echoing on the stone. She circled him again, watching for signs of weakness. His breathing stayed calm, his posture steady. Do you know what I could do to you? She asked. Her voice was sharp, meant to cut. I could end you in a moment. I could erase your name from this world, and no one would remember you. Aaron looked at her without anger. That is true, but memory does not make life worth living. How I live does. Her steps slowed. The answer pierced deeper than she expected. He did not cling to life the way most creatures did. He did not beg for survival or for mercy. He spoke as if there was something greater than survival itself. She stopped in front of him. Her golden eyes locked onto his calm face. Why do you speak like this? Do you think words will save you? No, Aaron said. I speak because they are true. If they change nothing, then at least I remained honest. The chamber fell silent again. Vera turned away, her cape brushing across the stone floor. She stood by the crystal window, staring at the endless horizon. You are unlike any I have faced. You stand as if nothing can shake you. But every creature breaks in time. Every soul bends to fear. What makes you believe you are different? Aaron lowered his head slightly. His voice carried no pride, only a calm strength. I am not different. I am human, and this is what we are. Vera turned sharply, her eyes narrowing. Explain. Aaron's gaze did not falter. My people are not the strongest. We are not the fastest. We do not have armor like yours or weapons that match your fire. But we endure, we fall, we suffer, we rise again. That is why I am not afraid of you. Because you cannot take from me the will to stand again. Vera felt her chest tighten. She wanted to call his words foolish, yet something inside her stirred. She had crushed countless enemies, but she had never seen one stand tall while bound in chains. He was fragile, yet he spoke as if his spirit could never be broken. She stepped closer once more, her voice lower now. Do you not care about death? Does it mean nothing to you? Aaron shook his head. Death comes to all. What matters is how we live before it comes. If I live in fear, then I die before my time. If I live with courage, then even my end cannot erase my life. The chamber grew heavy with silence. Vera stared at him, her breath uneven. His words felt like a storm pressing against the walls of her belief. She had thought fear was strength. She had thought obedience came only from fear. But this human spoke of something else, something she could not name. Finally, she asked the question that had been burning inside her since the first moment she saw him. Why are you not afraid, human? Aaron's answer came without hesitation. Because fear belongs to me, not to you. You cannot command it. Only I can. Vera's lips parted slightly, though no sound left her mouth. For the first time in many years, she felt something she did not expect. Her chest tightened, her breath caught. She looked away quickly, not wanting him to see. The sound of footsteps echoed outside the chamber. A messenger entered and bowed, deeply. Commander, the scouts report movement near the western ridge. An enemy force may be preparing to strike. Vera nodded firmly, regaining her composure. Prepare the defenses. I will lead when the time comes. The messenger bowed, again and left. The chamber was silent once more, leaving only her and the human. Vera turned back to him, her voice steady again, though her heart was not. You will remain here until I decide your fate, she said. Aaron nodded. Then I will wait. The guards returned and led him away. His steps were calm, as if he walked not toward a prison cell, but along a chosen path. The soldiers who passed him whispered to one another. Some said he was fearless. Others said he was mad. But in her chamber, Vera remained still. She stood by the crystal window, her eyes on the endless stars. She remembered his words. Fear belongs to me, not to you. Her heart was steady in battle, yet now it raced in silence. She wondered why his answer had left her breathless. The fortress was awake before the sun rose. Soldiers trained in the courtyards, their shouts carrying through the stone walls. The sound of machines echoed in the distance as engineers prepared weapons for the coming battles. Banners of the Empire waved proudly, showing power and control. Commander Vera walked through the halls with her usual sharp steps. Her armor reflected the torchlight, and the soldiers moved aside as she passed. To them, she was unshaken strength, the leader who never bent, the warrior who carried no doubt. Yet inside her heart, something had begun to stir. She remembered the words of the human. Fear belongs to me, not to you. His calm voice returned to her again and again. She told herself they were only words, nothing more. But they cut deeper than any blade. She had seen enemies crushed by fear, had built her power on it. Now, one fragile human had stood against her without trembling. The morning briefing began in the war hall. Officers stood around a large table where glowing lines formed maps of the land. One officer reported movements of a rival faction near the western ridge. Another spoke of supply shortages in the northern garrisons. Vera listened, but her focus wavered. She heard the words, yet her mind drifted back to the prisoner. When the meeting ended, she dismissed the officers quickly. She walked alone through the halls, her footsteps echoing on the stone floor. She passed soldiers who saluted, but their respect felt hollow to her now. For the first time, she questioned herself. Was their loyalty truly respect, or was it only fear? Her thoughts troubled her. If fear was the root of everything, then why had this human been so unshaken? Why had he looked at her not as a conqueror, not as a terror, but simply as another being? She remembered the calm in his eyes. She had seen bravery before, but never like his. Later, she went to the training ground. Her soldiers fought in pairs, their weapons clashing in sparks. She watched them with a stern gaze. One soldier faltered, dropping his guard. The other struck, sending him to the ground. The defeated soldier scrambled up quickly, fear in his eyes as he looked at her. Vera raised her voice. Do you fight because you fear me, or because you believe in victory? The soldiers froze. No one dared to answer. They looked at each other nervously, unsure of what she wanted to hear. Finally, one muttered, We fight because fear keeps us sharp. Vera's golden eyes narrowed. The answer was expected, but for the first time it felt wrong. She dismissed the soldiers and left the ground, her cape flowing behind her. That evening, she returned to the chamber where the human was kept. 2 guards stood at the door. They saluted and opened the heavy gate for her. Inside, Aaron sat on the stone floor, his hands still bound. He lifted his head when she entered, his calm expression unchanged. You return again, he said softly. Vera studied him. You have shaken my soldiers without speaking to them. They whisper about you. They wonder how a fragile human can stand so calm. Tell me, what is it that gives you such strength? Aaron looked at her quietly. It is not strength that is different. It is choice. Fear comes to all of us, but I do not let it command me. I live by what I believe, not by fear. She stepped closer. And what do you believe, human? I believe that life has meaning when we stand for something greater than fear, Aaron said. His voice was steady, not loud, but firm enough to fill the chamber. Vera crossed her arms. She wanted to dismiss his words as weakness, but she could not. Each time he spoke, She felt a weight inside her chest. She searched his face for signs of lies, but found none. "You are my prisoner," she said firmly. "You are bound, unarmed, and alone. Yet you speak as though you hold power. How can this be?" Aaron shook his head. "Power is not only in weapons or armies. Power is in spirit. You command your soldiers with fear. I command myself with courage. That is why I am not broken." Her heart tightened again. She turned away, walking toward the crystal window. Outside, the sky burned with the colors of sunset. She rested her hand on the glass, her reflection staring back at her. She remembered her victories, the battles she had won. But in all of them, she had never felt this doubt. For the first time, she asked herself a dangerous question. Were her soldiers loyal to her because they believed in her or because they feared her wrath? The answer unsettled her. She spoke without turning back. "Your words trouble me, human. I do not understand why. Perhaps it is because I have built my life on fear, and you show me something else. Or perhaps it is because your calm makes me feel unsteady." Aaron's voice came from behind her, steady and quiet. "Perhaps it is because you see that fear does not rule all things. You are strong, but strength without trust is hollow. Fear fades, but trust remains." Vera closed her eyes for a moment. She did not want to admit it, but his words struck true. She remembered the look in her soldier's eyes earlier that day, the fear that guided his every move. Was that true loyalty, or was it only survival? She turned back to Aaron. His face was calm, his eyes steady. He looked at her not as a conqueror, but as a person. That gaze unsettled her more than any weapon. "Enough," she said suddenly. Her voice was sharp again, though it trembled beneath. "You are my prisoner. Do not think your words will change me." Aaron gave a small nod. "I do not seek to change you. I only speak the truth." The guards returned when she called for them. They led him back to his chamber, his steps calm as always. When the door closed behind him, Vera remained alone. She stood in the silent hall, her thoughts heavy. She had never doubted herself before. She had never questioned her way of rule. Yet now, one human had placed doubt in her heart. As the night deepened, she sat in her chamber, staring at the stars. She remembered his words again. Fear fades, but trust remains. For the first time in her life, Commander Vera wondered if fear had been a chain not only for her soldiers, but for herself. The fortress grew restless in the days that followed. Scouts brought reports of enemy movements near the borders. Rival factions were preparing to strike, and soldiers whispered about battles soon to come. The air was filled with the sound of weapons being sharpened, machines being prepared, and banners being raised higher. Yet within the walls, the whispers about the human prisoner did not fade. Some soldiers said the human was strange, a being who felt no fear. Others said he was dangerous, his calm more threatening than any blade. A few even wondered if he had powers hidden beneath his fragile form. No one could understand him, and that mystery spread like fire. Commander Vera heard these whispers, but did not silence them. She told herself it did not matter, yet each day she found herself walking again to the chamber where the human was kept. At first she told herself it was only to study him, to learn his secrets, but soon she realized there was more. Aaron sat quietly whenever she entered, never begging, never shouting. He greeted her with calm eyes, the same steady look that had unsettled her since the first moment. She found herself speaking to him more than she planned. What began as questions about his courage slowly turned into conversations about his people, their ways, and their stories. One evening she asked, "Tell me of your home, human. What makes your people endure?" Aaron lifted his head and spoke softly. "Our home was never easy. Storms would tear across the land and we built again. Winters would freeze our crops and we found ways to survive. We did not endure because life was gentle. We endured because life was harsh. That is why fear cannot rule us. Vera listened without interrupting. His words painted pictures of a world unlike her own. To her people, power was taken by conquest. To his, survival was, earned by unity and patience. She found herself imagining his world, the storms, the fire, the rivers, and the fragile beings who rose again after every fall. Another day, she asked him, "Do you not hate me? I am your captor. I hold your fate in my hands." Aaron looked at her calmly. Hate changes nothing. If I hate you, I waste my spirit. If I understand you, perhaps something good can come from it. The answer struck her deeply. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Enemies cursed her name. Allies respected her strength but kept their distance. Yet this human spoke to her as if she were not only a commander, but a person. Day by day, their conversations grew longer. Sometimes they spoke of battles, sometimes of simple things, like food, the sound of rivers, or the warmth of fire. Aaron spoke with honesty, never trying to impress her, never trying to bend her will. His calm became something she began to seek without realizing it. The soldiers noticed their commander visiting the prisoner more often. They whispered among themselves, confused. Some thought she was trying to break him. Others believed she studied him for secrets. None of them guessed the truth, that the commander who had ruled through fear was beginning to find comfort in the presence of a single human. One night, when the fortress was quiet, Vera sat outside the chamber with only a torch burning beside her. She looked at the heavy door and spoke through it. "Human, why do you not curse me? Why do you not demand freedom? Do you not wish to return to your people?" From within, his voice came steady. "I do wish it, but I do not waste myself on chains I cannot break. I wait, and I endure. That is my strength." She sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the torch flame. His words echoed inside her, reminding her of the doubt that had begun to grow. For the first time in her life, she wondered if her strength had been built on a weaker foundation than his. The next day, she allowed him into the garden inside the fortress. It was a walled space where alien trees grew tall, their leaves glowing faintly under the sun. Soldiers watched carefully from the walls, but Vera walked beside him without fear. Aaron touched the bark of one tree and smiled faintly. Even here, life finds a way to grow. Vera found herself asking, "Do you see beauty even in a place like this?" "Yes," Aaron replied. "Beauty is not in the place. It is in how we choose to see it." Her chest tightened again. She had walked through the garden many times, yet never had she thought of it that way. She had seen it as a symbol of her power, a place she had claimed. To him, it was simply life, and that made it beautiful. As days passed, their bond grew silently. No chains were broken, no orders were given, yet something unseen connected them. Vera felt it each time she looked into his calm eyes. Aaron never tried to escape, never begged, never resisted. He only spoke with honesty, and that honesty slowly broke through the walls she had built around her own heart. Late one evening, she asked him, "Why do you keep speaking to me with such calm?" "I have done nothing to earn it." Aaron looked at her with that same steady gaze. "Because calm is not something you must earn from me. It is something I choose to give." Her breath caught. She turned away quickly, hiding her reaction. But inside she felt a warmth she had never known. For years she had been the blade others feared. Now, for the first time, she felt seen as more than a commander, more than a conqueror. The fortress outside prepared for war, Enemies gathered at the borders. Soldiers sharpened their blades and prayed for strength. Yet inside the stone walls, a quiet bond was forming between a human prisoner and the alien commander who had once demanded fear. Neither of them spoke of it directly, neither of them named it, but when their eyes met, something passed between them, something stronger than fear, stronger than chains, a bond that neither of them could deny. The sun had barely risen when the fortress shook with the sound of alarms. Sirens blared through the stone halls, and soldiers rushed to their stations. The sky was dark with the shapes of incoming enemy crafts. Rival banners flew over the ridge, and the sound of war drums thundered across the plain. Commander Vera stood at the top of the fortress wall, her cape snapping in the cold wind. Her golden eyes scanned the horizon. She saw armored troops gathering below, siege machines being pulled into place, and the glow of weapons preparing to fire. The rival faction had come in full force. Her soldiers waited for her command. They looked steady, but she knew the truth. Their eyes carried fear. They always carried fear. It had kept them obedient until now, but against such numbers, fear would not be enough. Inside the fortress, Aaron sat in his chamber, listening to the alarms. He knew the sound of war when he heard it. Through the small window above him, he saw smoke rising in the distance. Soldiers ran past, their footsteps echoing through the halls. He closed his eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. Soon the door opened and 2 guards dragged him out. They were ordered to move all prisoners to the lower levels for safety. But as they pushed him along the hall, the ground shook violently. The walls cracked as enemy fire struck the fortress. Stones fell, and 1 guard was crushed beneath the debris. The other dropped his weapon in panic and fled. Aaron found himself alone in the broken corridor. He could have run, but instead, he walked calmly toward the sound of battle. His steps were steady even as the walls trembled around him. On the outer wall, Vera shouted orders. Soldiers fired their weapons, machines roared, and the clash of steel filled the air. Yet the enemy pressed harder, pushing closer with every wave. Her warriors fought with strength, but she saw their fear growing. She saw hesitation in their strikes, panic in their eyes. Then, to her shock, she saw the human. Aaron appeared on the wall, his hands still bound, but his eyes steady. The soldiers gasped when they noticed him. Some shouted for him to be restrained, but Vera raised her hand and silenced them. She watched as he stepped forward calmly, looking at the battlefield below. Aaron's voice rose above the chaos. Your enemy is strong, but their formation is weak. They rush too quickly. Look at their left flank. It is thin. Strike there, and you will break them. The soldiers stared at him, confused. None of them expected a prisoner to speak of battle, yet his words carried certainty. Vera's eyes narrowed. She studied the enemy lines and saw he was right. Their left side was stretched too far, leaving a gap. She shouted orders, and her troops shifted at once. The soldiers struck the weak point with full force. The enemy's line bent, then cracked. For the first time in the battle, the fortress defenders pushed forward instead of falling back. The soldiers roared, their fear turning into a spark of courage. Aaron stood among them, calm as ever. Though he held no weapon, his voice carried more strength than blades. He called out again, pointing to another mistake in the enemy's advance. Their center moves too quickly. Hold your ground, and they will break apart. Once again, Vera saw he was right. She gave the command, and the defenders held firm. The enemy pushed hard, but their own speed became their weakness. Their formations split, and Vera's soldiers struck them down. The tide of battle shifted. What had begun as certain defeat turned into resistance, then into hope. The defenders shouted louder, their strikes sharper, their fear fading with each moment. They looked not to fear for strength, but to the calm voice of the human who guided them. When the enemy began to retreat, the sky was filled with their banners falling back across the ridge. The fortress walls were scarred, smoke rose from broken towers, but the defenders still stood. Victory had come, and it had come through words, not fear. After the battle, Vera stood on the wall, her armor scratched, her cape torn. She looked at Aaron, who remained calm though dust covered his face and chains bound his wrists. Her soldiers whispered among themselves. Some looked at him with awe, others with confusion. None could deny what he had done. Vera walked toward him slowly. Her golden eyes met his calm gaze. She spoke quietly so only he could hear. "You saved this fortress." Aaron shook his head. "I did nothing but speak. Your people did the fighting. They only needed to believe in themselves, not in fear." Her chest tightened again. His words cut through her like the enemy blades. Never could. She looked at her soldiers, who were cheering not from fear, but from victory. For the first time, she saw them fight, not because they feared her wrath, but because they had found courage. That night, the fortress was filled with celebration. Fires burned in the courtyards. Soldiers raised cups of drink, and songs echoed through the halls. Yet Vera sat alone in her chamber, staring at the stars through the crystal window. She thought of the battle, of the human's calm voice guiding, her troops, and of the victory that had been impossible without him. She whispered to herself, "Fear did not save us today." The truth was heavy. All her life she had built power on fear, yet in one battle a human had shown her another path. She could not ignore it. She could not silence it. When the fortress grew quiet again, she went to the chamber where Aaron was kept. The guards hesitated, but she ordered them away. She entered alone, standing in the dim light. Aaron looked up at her calmly. "You should not have come to the wall," she said. "Yet without you, we would have fallen." "I did what I could," Aaron replied. "It was not for me. It was for those who still had a chance to live." Vera's breath caught. She looked at him, her mind full of questions she could not speak. She wanted to ask why he cared, why he risked himself for people who had made him a prisoner. She wanted to ask why his calm voice had given her soldiers more strength than all her commands. But no words came. She stood there in silence, her heart unsteady. For the first time in her life, the commander who had built her power on fear felt powerless before a single human spirit. The fortress was quiet after the long night. Smoke still rose from broken walls, but the enemy was gone, and the defenders had survived. The soldiers moved slowly through the courtyards, carrying stones, repairing gates, and tending to the wounded. For the first time in many months, there was no fear in their eyes. They walked with tired smiles, sharing food and water like family. Commander Vera stood on the highest tower, watching her people work. She was proud, but she was also troubled. Her heart was heavy with thoughts she could not ignore. All her life, she had believed fear was the only force strong enough to hold her army together. Yet in one day, the human had shown her another path. His calm voice had guided her people better than all her threats ever could. She remembered the way Aaron had stood on the wall with no weapon, no armor, and yet no fear. His chains had not stopped him. His calmness had spread like fire among the soldiers. They had looked at him as if he carried something greater than strength. She wanted to understand what that was. Later that morning, she entered the chamber, where Aaron was kept. The guards moved aside quickly, for none dared to question her now. Inside, the human sat near the window, his eyes on the light of dawn. His chains still bound his wrists, but he looked peaceful. "You should rest," Vera said, her voice softer than usual. "You fought without a sword, yet you carried the weight of the battle." Aaron looked at her calmly. "I did not fight. Your people did. They only needed to see they could win." Vera frowned. "Why help us at all? You are a prisoner here." "You owe us nothing." Aaron tilted his head slightly. Because life matters. It does not matter whose banner flies above the wall. Those soldiers have families. They deserved a chance to live. That was enough for me. His words cut deep into her heart. She had ruled through fear, never once thinking of the lives of her soldiers as anything more than tools. Yet he, a stranger and a prisoner, cared for them more than she ever had. She wanted to speak, but silence stretched between them. For the first time, she felt nervous in front of someone. She was the commander of a great fortress. Yet she felt small before a chained human. As the day went on, whispers spread through the fortress. The soldiers spoke of the human with admiration. Some called him the silent guide. Others called him the fearless one. None looked at him as a prisoner anymore. They looked at him as a symbol of hope. That evening, Vera gathered her officers in the war hall. The maps of the land were spread across the stone table. Torches lit the chamber, casting shadows on the walls. She spoke firmly. Our enemy will return. They tasted defeat, but they will come again with greater force. We cannot depend on fear alone to stand against them. The officers exchanged uncertain looks. One asked carefully, "Then what shall guide us, Commander?" Vera hesitated. In her heart, she already knew the answer, but it was difficult to admit. She remembered Aaron's calm gaze, his steady voice, and the courage he had given her soldiers. Slowly, she said, "We must learn courage. We must fight not because we fear death, but because we wish to protect life." The officers were silent, surprised by her words, yet some of them nodded slowly. They too had seen the change in the soldiers. They too had felt the difference when the human had spoken. When the meeting ended, Vera returned once more to the chamber where Aaron stayed. This time she entered without guards. She carried a small blade in her hand, and Aaron looked at it calmly. "Are you here to silence me now?" he asked quietly. Vera shook her head. With a single motion, she cut the chains from his wrists. The iron fell to the floor with a heavy sound. "You are no longer my prisoner," she said. Her voice trembled, though she tried to steady it. "You are free." Aaron rubbed his wrists gently, but made no move to leave. "Why free me now?" Vera took a breath. "Because I have learned something from you. I ruled with fear, but fear almost destroyed us. You showed my people that courage is stronger. I cannot keep you in chains when you are the reason they stand tall today." Aaron gave a small nod. "Then lead them with courage, not fear. They will follow you, but only if you let them believe in themselves." Her chest tightened again. Every word he spoke made her heart heavy yet lighter at the same time. She wanted to ask him many questions, but instead she whispered, "Why are you never afraid? Even when death stands before you, you look calm." Why? Aaron looked at her with steady eyes. "Because fear changes nothing. Fear does not stop pain. Fear does not stop death. But courage can change the future. That is why I choose courage." His answer left her breathless. She felt as if the walls around her heart had broken. For the first time in her life, she understood why her soldiers looked at him with awe. In the days that followed, the fortress grew stronger again. Broken walls were rebuilt, and new banners were raised. The soldiers trained harder, not out of fear of punishment, but with a will to protect each other. They laughed together, shared meals together, and stood taller than before. Vera saw the change, and she knew it came from the lesson of one human. She often walked beside Aaron through the courtyards. The soldiers saluted him with respect, though he always reminded them he was just a man. Vera watched him closely, always searching for the source of his strength. Each time she saw it was not in his hands or his voice, but in the calm spirit within him. One night, as the stars shone above the fortress, Vera stood with Aaron on the wall. The wind carried the scent of firewood and the distant sound of soldiers singing. She looked at him quietly and said, "I was wrong about humans. I thought you were weak, but you are stronger than any warrior I have ever known." Aaron smiled, faintly. "Strength is not always in the blade. Sometimes it is only in the heart." Her breath caught again, and she turned her gaze to the stars. She knew she would never see the world the same way again. A single human had broken the chains of fear within her. He had left her breathless not with power but with courage.